Alright, total cost of ownership is the subject of this video. People call it TCO, total cost of ownership. We'll talk about what total cost of ownership is, how it relates to ROI, or return on investment, and why it's important both if you're running a business and as a salesperson as part of the sales process. Total cost of ownership really is designed to find the lifetime cost of acquiring, operating, or changing something inside your business. These could be fixed assets like IT purchases, they can be a new building, they can be hiring new people, it can be pretty much any expense or investment inside your business. So as a reminder, return on investment is looking at the cost of doing some investment and the return of that investment over time. So total cost of ownership is primarily focused on the cost structure. It's really important to note, though, that total cost of ownership highlights the difference between price and long-term cost. It's different as a salesperson to say, my computer system costs $100,000 a year, but there might be all these other costs to the business that's making that investment decision in order to buy that system, install it, and operate it over time. So it's designed to really draw in all of the incremental, soft, potentially hidden costs of making a business investment. So it's really important to run models around total cost of ownership, especially for asset decisions, things like budgeting, asset life cycle. These are the things that it'll facilitate, that it really helps with. Budgeting, judging asset life cycles, when will things need to be replaced and how much is that going to cost? Prioritizing acquisitions, or investments, meaning, I've got to buy these 8 things for my business. Which one am I going to buy first? Total cost of ownership will often help making that decision. And then vendor selection. This is very commonly how your customers are looking at buying your products. Even I would argue, even internet businesses that are paying for access to a website or something. It's really it takes a different form. It's sort of how much time am I spend doing these things and how hard is it to get into the website and that. But there's still a concept here of total cost of ownership, of what's the total amount of time and energy I'm going to have to expend over time. So let's look at total cost of ownership analysis. This is a real simple analysis. There are dozens of these. The trick is you're going to build an analysis for your own company. That's really what's going to happen. These things are going to look different for every company. So basically what we're trying to do is take all soft costs under consideration. So we're trying to figure out everything associated with this investment, what's going to happen. So in this case, I'm buying some software. I also have to have hardware to run the software. But it's not just, this might be the purchase price right here, just buying the software and hardware, right? It's not just that, of course. Now I have to have people to run the system. Do I need to build a new building, or do I have to put air conditioning in? What do I have to do to my facilities to support it? And then are there regulatory risks? Are there taxes? There could be all kinds of other things. So the sales guy is saying to this guy, yeah, you should buy my computer system, and it only costs $450,000, and here's the ROI based on $450,000. That's not really true. As the acquiring CEO, I'm going to look at this situation and say, wait a second, there's a larger total cost of ownership to run this system. I don't have to hire any people to buy it, and I don't really need to build a new building to buy it, but geez, is there some regulatory risk if I make a change? I don't really know. We'll come back to that. And then how much is it going to cost me to run this thing ongoing? Well, I have to pay maintenance to the software company of $35,000, and I'll probably lose a server every year, so I'm going to have to replace a server every year. But it'll save me 1 full-time employee. That's the good news from the personnel perspective, is that I don't have to have 3 people running these old systems anymore. Also, I'm going to have to retrofit my facility a little bit to fit this stuff in over time as we grow. So I'm going to factor in $10,000 for that. No big regulatory issues. But that's not even it. Acquiring and operating isn't it. I'm also going to change. I've got to swap my old system out for the new one. So what's that process of changing going to involve? Well, in this case, geez, I've got $100,000 in software costs. There's some other dependent system that I'm going to have to upgrade in order for it to talk to this system. Because my old system can talk to it just fine, but this new one can't. So I'm going to have to put $100,000 into some totally unrelated deal. This is a really common area where salespeople can't figure out why a company's saying no. And the reason is there's some financial effect that's humongous on another piece of software, or another piece of their business that the salesperson isn't conscious of. Same thing with hardware. Oh, well, in order to run that new software, I'm going to have to come up with 25 grand in new servers. And a little bit of bad news here, I'm going to have to take half a year of someone's time to do this installation. And then there's a facilities cost during the change of, I've got to hire people to do various things for 10 grand. And there's a regulatory cost. Let's say I'm a business that's watched by the SEC. Now I've got to get the regulator to come back in and check that my system's still up to par. So these are all things that, all this stuff out here are things that sales guys will sometimes forget to take into account during that process. Is really, what's the operating and change cost associated with bringing in whatever this decision is. That's really the key to total cost of ownership. This would be price, the price of your product. But that has to figure into the discussion you're having. This happens more with enterprise sales than it does with individual sales, but it's an important concept to apply to any business situation, especially where you're selling or where you're making a decision as a business owner to make a purchase. So it's key to build your own model. You should work on it. It'll change over time, but you should really be conscious of what the total cost of ownership is for your potential customers and for yourself, for your own business. Really, when you're making a proposal to a customer, it's your proposal versus business as usual. That's what they're judging it against, or even another competitor. So you're saying, look, here's my total cost of ownership, and if it's an improvement on business as usual, it's usually where you're going to get interested customers. Also, this total cost of ownership, we talked about this a little bit, it helps compute ROI. There's a payback period and break-even that can be, you use this to really figure out. Some of you have seen that ROI video, but there's like, I'm losing money here over time, and then I'm making money here. What's this payback period? How long is this? And that's called my break-even window or payback period. So it helps to calculate that. Also, these are sort of what's going to happen institutionally when you go through this process of figuring total cost of ownership. The first thing it'll do is it'll flush out hidden costs. So just the fact that you're going to sit in a room and brainstorm with people about how is this really going to affect a client when they make this purchase. That will help you figure out, oh, there are these things we didn't remember that are very important. All this stuff is super important to the client's decision making. Also, areas of risk and potential problems, that's why I sort of wrote this up here. Maybe you don't know whether there's some potential regulatory or tax problems with installing that system. You got to go research it. It just calls that to mind so you don't make a mistake by purchasing that software without knowing that stuff. Also, anytime you can have a discussion with a potential client around this subject, and they're honest and forthright about the costs associated, if it's a beta client or what have you, that's just great for your business. It helps you get a huge, important contextual understanding of what's happening at your potential customers. Really, really hard to predict sales without knowing this stuff, because you're always concerned with the price, and they seem to be okay with the price. What you don't know is it costs 3 times as much for them to do the implementation. So, really important concept, total cost of ownership. It's about as important as ROI. It's really sort of the bottom of the ROI calculation. It's the cost piece. And it's the difference between price and long-term cost is a big, big deal to companies. So put some thought into this around your own company, and put thought into this when acquiring new assets or making any new investment from your company's perspective.